Jason Rogers, it is always a pleasure to see you, my friend. How you doing?
Garth, it's good to be back on the pod. Good to
Yeah,
see you as well. And here we are. It's summertime. Garth, it's
it is
summertime.
summertime. So I've got a question for you, Jason. What are you up to this summer? What are you going to be doing?
Stampede in Calgary is a thing, so I'm dusting off
That's right.
the boots and the hat starting tomorrow, if you can believe. Well, we're recording this first week of July, and then do that for about a week, and then I retreat to the lake for about a month, and then
Hmm.
I'll probably work a little bit out there, but then I'll come back and be back in the office start of August, and getting ready for the new school year. That's the plan. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, so you're taking time to recharge, take
Yes.
some time to rejuvenate and stuff like that. So, Jason, when you're off and away, I know that you're a thoughtful guy. What are you going to be thinking about as you head into the new year?
Well, the first thing is, Garth, I think, yeah, as leaders, we have to try to think about as little as possible because we don't know what's going to emerge in our minds. I think sometimes that's the best thing. But I mean, specifically, as we move into next year, obviously there's a lot of things top of mind around generative AI. We're obviously thinking about the visions for our school and some of the work that lies ahead. But yeah, the how will generative AI change our schools, but also change education as a whole is top of mind for me. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, summer plans. Do a lot of reading. For me, um, Greg Wells, Dr. Greg Wells, he
Hmm.
talks about this idea of repetitive motion meditation, like swimming, cycling, running, and stuff like that. So
Cool.
that's how I love how you phrase it. That's how I get to think about as little as possible in those
Hmm.
moments. My brain
Hmm.
really shuts off, which is really, really nice. And then I arrive at the end of the run, the bike, the swim, whatever it is. I'm like, oh, now I've got clarity on something.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think vision, Gen AI. So I also think that we have to. I'll be thinking about well-being
Hmm.
from a school-wide operational viewpoint.
Yep.
How do we not make well-being modules? How do we
Right.
integrate it into who we are? Um, I'm also going to be thinking about because a lovely parent um, gifted me a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. And
Right.
I've read this before. I've
Such a
done a
good
book
book.
review on it, but it reminded me, our role as leaders. What is our role
Hmm.
as leader to be a leader, right? And that is that generosity of time, generosity of spirit, that generosity of patience. You and I have talked about being a thermostat for others too, and also, being that thermostat. George Couros just posted something on LinkedIn recently. George Couros, friend of the show, Jason, friend of the show.
Multiple time friend of the show. Yes.
And basically the quotation was something, and I'll paraphrase, was something like when you're undergoing organizational change, don't focus on what's being taken away. Focus on the opportunities. Focus
Yes.
on what this change will give other people, right? And that
Hmm.
is a real frame of mind. And that requires some strategy. And culture eats strategy for breakfast, unless of course the strategy is culture.
That's right.
And I
That's right.
think I think our upcoming guest can speak to this so effectively. So on this podcast, we've got Tom Olverson.
That's
Tom
correct.
Olverson, unbelievable history, career. He was head of school in Hawaii and then moved to Boston. Why would you do that? I don't know, but he wanted to take on a really great, meaty challenge, and he took over a school and created an unbelievable culture within this school, a culture of possibility and opportunity, and really leveled up the school into being one of the top 10 in the area. And so we'll hear from him about not only his book, but the stories that he has. And this book is almost like his memoir
Yeah.
of his time at that school. And so I'm looking really forward to revisiting that over the summer as well, because that will help me think about how I think.
So, and you've teed it up really nicely for our summer plans, Garth. I mean, we've got Tom's book on strategy coming up. We've got,
Hmm.
and we've made a bit of a shift as well. We're gonna hit you with one author after another for
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks here,
Yeah.
to really get you fired up for the coming year and get you set up. We've got Dr. Jody Carrington joining us in a
Hmm.
couple weeks' time. We'll have a Rundle alum named Mia Berloni joining us too, and that's where Unreasonable Hospitality
Unreasonable
comes in.
hospitality. Yeah.
She runs one of the
Some,
best restaurants in all of Calgary, and she's got some super insight as to how do you be customer centric.
yeah.
So I mean, we've got a whole hit parade of authors coming up for our listeners, and I can't wait for everybody to lean in. Hopefully, pick up a book or two of these,
Yeah.
and enjoy that summer downtime. I think that's what we can all look forward to.
Yeah. And then as you head back into the office in August, we're going to bring together a group of people, an unbelievable group of people who've agreed to come onto our podcast because our recent episodes with Kate Arthur really sparked some of our listeners and they wanted more. And actually, so did I.
Yeah, no
This
doubt.
idea of literacy in the age of generative AI. And so we've got two, not one listeners, but two panels coming onto the show. And we've got thought leaders. We'll tease them out throughout the summer, but these are people, these are men and women who are working deeply in this space. And some are up here in the, in the theoretical side of generative AI, and some are classroom practitioners of it. And so we're going to ask them, what's inspiring you about generative AI? What worries you about generative AI? What's a strategy that you have going into the new year about generative AI? And you'll get some as promised, you'll get some practical advice, and you'll also get some real thought-provoking provocations, if I can say that, thought-provoking provocations about how your school, how your organization is going to utilize generative AI or not.
So, listeners, to summarize, we're going to cover about 4 books in the next 4 weeks, and then we're going to drop right into a Gen AI sub-series with some of North America's top thinkers and leaders in this space, and hopefully for teachers and leaders across our network, whether you're in the independent system, public, charter, or otherwise, hopefully this will set you up for a successful 26-27 as we look at the big picture ideas moving into the year. And as always, aspiring to lead in a kinder, more compassionate way, in that kind of lasso way that Garth, you and I have been talking about for almost 3 full years now, and I'm excited to keep that going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, listen, enjoy this next guest, Tom Olverson. His book, Leading Through Strategy. I've used it all year long. It sits on my sits on my office side table. It's an unbelievable sort of masterclass in how to strategically approach change and opportunities in your school. So, enjoy, everybody.
Yeah, hope you pick up the book. Have a great summer.
Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow.
Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership. I'm Jason Rogers, and I am one of the hosts of this show, and I'm here joined today, again, as always, with my partner, Garth Nichols.
Hey, everyone. Great to be back. And today's episode is one that I am really, really looking forward to. We're joined by a true guide for leaders stepping into complexity, Thomas Olverson, author of Leading Through Strategy and former head of school at the Rivers School in Boston, and currently consulting as well, Jason.
And, Tom's book, as you know, if you've read it, I know we sent it out over the summer and people may or may not have picked it up, but, it's part memoir, part manual, and fully packed with wisdom for any head navigating strategic change in today's independent school world and landscape. Whether you're 5 years into the job or you're 5 years from taking on the job, I really think this conversation is for you. I think this is going to be a good one, Garth.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Tom, your book was recommended to me by a colleague, and I'm so glad that Aaron Hawk, my colleague, put me onto this book. It's hard for me. It was hard for me not to like highlight or underline like on every single page. It's such a valuable resource. So before I ask you to introduce yourself, I want to tell the listeners, this book is not long, right? It's 160 pages, some odd, in really good font. Like it's a quick read, but it's dense. Because I think, Tom, the purpose of this book is really meaningful. So I'm going to read a bit from the afterword. You say this book is designed to demonstrate the benefits of strategy to independent school leaders. It also represents a plea to independent school organizations to invest more in future leadership of schools. Despite a handful of programs designed to prepare administrators for a headship, the absence of meaningful preparation for these rising stars is palpable. And that is one of the reasons, Tom, I'm so grateful that I have your book, because as Jason said, it's part memoir, it's part manual of how to do it. And it's a biography. It's your experience. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm excited to bring you to our listeners. So with all that being said, Tom, can you just take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Tom Olverson, and I am a consultant with Resource Group 175, coming up on 11 years. I primarily do a handful of head searches each year, and then I mentor anywhere from 5 to 7 heads of school throughout the country, and act as sort of a thought partner with them. Before that, I was the head at the Rivers School for 17 years, just outside of Boston. Very competitive independent school market. Lots of old, well-established, prestigious, rich independent schools that Rivers had to compete against. And again, I was there for 17 years as head of school. And before that, and that was a 6 through 12 school of about 500 kids. And before that, I was head of school at Seabury Hall on the island of Maui in Hawaii for 10 years. And again, 6 through 12 school, about 500 students.
And before we started, Tom said you may have people questioning why I moved from Maui to Boston, but you actually talk about that at the very beginning of your book, like how you made these decisions. So listen, Tom, thank you so much. Let's jump right in. The book is called Leading Through Strategy, and one of your strongest assertions is that a plan is not a strategy. So help us understand, what does strategy mean to you, and why do you think so many schools confuse the two, a plan with a strategy?
So that quote actually comes from Roger Martin's book, Playing to Win, and also one of his YouTube videos. And I think that most schools, when they start thinking about the future, gravitate to what they call strategic planning. And I think that the assumptions or the thinking behind strategic planning really amounts to, one, tackling big problems that will take more than a year to solve. And so in their mind, strategic is a factor of time and nothing more. And two, sort of keeping up with the Joneses. In other words, other schools are doing programs A, B, and C. Therefore, we need to do programs A, B, and C. And strategy is just very, very different. Strategy is a set of integrated choices that are designed to create value for the school and for its stakeholders. And so what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, a set of integrated choices. Those choices are typically answers to 5 key questions that Roger Martin comes up with in his book, Playing to Win. The first is, what's your winning aspiration? In essence, what is your vision for the school? Secondly, where do you want to play? What part of the market are you going to play in? What kinds of schools are you going to compete against? Geographically, in terms of the kinds of programs that you're offering, especially in terms of the kinds of students you're trying to attract. Thirdly, how are you going to win? What's the game plan for winning? Fourthly, and this is the last two, I really appreciate Martin including these last two because they make strategy practical. The fourth question is, what are your capabilities? And fifthly, what systems and structures are needed in order to implement the vision or achieve the vision? And the fact that they're integrated means that the answer to any one of those 5 questions has to sync with the answers to all the other 4 questions. If they don't sync, it's not going to work. So if your vision is to be the leader of AI or some advanced technology, and you don't have a history of philanthropy, or you don't have revenue streams that are going to not only jumpstart the infrastructure that you need, but also to keep it going, then that's going to be a difficult vision or winning aspiration to achieve. So that's really, really important. And then the other key word, there are two other key words in that definition. The next one is choice. Strategy is about choices. In fact, I mentioned in my book that if your strategy doesn't feel like a bet, it's probably not really a strategy. And that's something to really keep in mind if a school wants to adopt strategy as a means of shaping its future. And then the final one is value. You are, in adopting a strategy, you are making a bet that you're going to create value for the school and its stakeholders. Not only will you strengthen the school's position in the market, which also means that you're going to strengthen the school's capabilities in terms of fundraising, but in addition, you are going to put future leaders of the school in a better position to live the mission going forward and come up with new and better ideas to live the mission and to be able to fund that because you've strengthened the value proposition of the school.
So, Tom, as I'm listening to this, and from the head seat that I'm in, sometimes I think about strategy as being akin to progress. And as you say, it's a bet. I think it's a bet on progress. I think that's how I see it. And if that's correct, I wonder how you'd answer the question about the tension that lives with tradition in our independent schools. And I don't think it's just independent schools. I think public charter schools probably have a similar tension. But how do you reconcile progress and the bet on progress through strategy with rich and strong and rooted tradition? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think in the school business, it's really critical that your winning aspiration, your vision, go through the filters of the school's mission, number one, the school's history and culture, through the quite frankly, the passion of the leadership, including the board of trustees and the head of school or the principal. And I think that that's a distinction between independent schools and for-profit businesses. But the fact that it has to go through those filters shouldn't prevent leadership from trying to develop a winning aspiration. I think that we've got to stop pitting mission against market going forward, and we need to use our imaginations to reconcile them, so that when schools are doing strategy and coming up with strategic goals that really reflect strategy, which essentially means that they're strengthening the value proposition and trying to win a segment of the market. I just think that although that winning aspiration has to go through those filters, we can't let that prevent us from coming up with those essential goals. Again, we got to stop pitting mission against market if we're going to be successful in independent schools. And that's a question of imagination.
Mm. So let me jump in on that too, Tom, because you are, as we said, this is like a manual for new heads. You have a lot of great opinions, strong opinions about the role of head in leadership. And so one of the things that you say in your book is when schools avoid the essential choices that arise from developing a strategy, there are often other agendas driving decision making, some which may have nothing to do with the school or its challenges. And only the leadership of the head can overcome the significant headwinds preventing the school from changing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how a new head, or like Jason, you've been in the role for 11 years. What are some strategies? What are some advice you would give to heads, because it's in the book, in how to understand how to manage making those choices?
Yeah, and that's involves a complicated answer, a complex answer. But first of all, I would begin with the importance of the head developing a deep understanding of the school. And in the book, I have a chapter about the need for the head to do their own SWOT analysis.
Yeah. I read that and I thought that was you position in such a great way, as this is like not only research, but this is you finding your feet as well as a new head.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for a number of reasons. First of all, the head has to develop a deep understanding of the school and the potential impediments to change, including faculty culture, board culture, lack of resources, all of those kinds of things. And as well as the head needs to spend some time understanding the history of the school and looking for, what Van Wyck Brooks called a usable past, so that you can take that past and use it as a justification for change going forward. And that learning is really important as in setting up or creating a foundation for change. You can't just come in and start making changes. You've got to take into account the institution, and you've got to honor the institution and its history and its values and its strengths. And you have to, in effect, spit back those strengths to the community in order to demonstrate to the community that you are honoring it and that you get this place. But on another level too, I find when I'm doing head searches and when going through head transitions, there's often a power vacuum that the search committee or the board has temporarily filled in because they've gotten much closer to the school in order to analyze what it needs in its next leader. And so they've learned about, oh gosh, I didn't realize that the administration worked this way, or I didn't realize that the history department was a problem, so forth and so on. And I think that the head, and this is the Machiavellian in me, but I think the head has to be very intentional about rebalancing that power by demonstrating to the board that he or she has done their homework. They understand the school. They understand the school better than the trustees understand the school. They understand the history of the school better than the trustees understand the school. And I think that it's really that one of the values of doing a SWOT analysis is presenting findings to a board and probably to a faculty as well, in order to engender confidence in the head's leadership, that this person is not shooting from the hip, that this person is not bringing ideas from his old school, which that happens all the time. I don't know if it happens in Canada. It certainly happens in the United States. Gosh, this worked at my old school. It should therefore work here. And if you think about the subtle arrogance of that thinking, it's just wrong. It's not honoring that school and that school's particular challenges, nor its history and values and culture. And so I think it's really important for the head, in order to engender confidence, especially with the board, to say, present that SWOT analysis. And then there's one last point I want to make about this. When you're doing that SWOT analysis, you are looking for levers, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking about change. I've got to jumpstart change. What levers are there? In the book, I mentioned that it took me 2 or 3 months to finally pry out of the CFO that he had been squirreling away $2 million accumulated, which I needed in order to go out and attract some talented teachers. But it was conversation after conversation after conversation. But that was an important piece of information. And then in addition, I also learned that this school the Rivers School had this offshoot, the Rivers Music School, which became a gem in the music world, but the Rivers School wasn't using it at all. It was almost like 2 separate organizations. Again, if you don't take the time to learn about your school, then you don't really understand those assets that you can leverage in order to bring about the kind of change that you want to bring about.
I love that.
This is me being a kid in a candy shop, Garth. This is so fun to talk to Tom about these things and just laying out a real playbook for what to look for in school leadership. Garth, I'm sure you're enjoying it thoroughly as well. I've got a question that's kind of personal, Tom. So here it is. I'm a head of a school and I'm about to enter into a new strategic planning process. If you were to give me some advice as to what you've seen in strat plan work, as to what's the one point of failure that you see most often and how can you avoid that from the head of school seat?
I would say, I don't know if this is the most prevalent one, but it's the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Is when the strategic plans are developed, the typical strategic plans, you hire a consultant. The consultant comes in and interviews people and might study some data and so forth. And then you have a big retreat with the board and so forth and so on. And I think that process often lends itself to 2 potential problems. One is that you can come away with a political document because the people on the board who are perceived as having the loudest voices or perceived as being the most powerful win the day. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean, if you enact what they want, that is going to create value for the institution. Mm-hmm. That's going to put the school in a better position to get more of the students that it wants to get and to raise more money and create other revenue streams because its value proposition is stronger. So you've kind of created this political document that doesn't really help advance the school. And then the second thing is that most strategic plans and strategic planning processes that do that they end up solving a bunch of problems as opposed to really creating a future. I mean, strategy is about winning. It's about winning. Okay. And essentially one of the things I ask when I'm doing discovery for my head of school searches, I ask the board, what do you want your parents in 7 years to say
Yes.
to prospective parents when asked, hey, I know your kid went to the school. What makes it so special? What do you want them to say? And your job as a head is to lead a collective effort to develop a consensus about what you want them to say, and then to get them to say that. And it's that easy and it's that hard. So that's, I feel like the traditional strategic planning process, when it's focused on solving a bunch of problems, it's easy to just, after a couple of years, put it aside. And I'll say one last thing too. When you're doing strategy, it's real strategy. It's a lot easier to involve your faculty and administrators because you're telling them. I use this analogy in the book. I basically say, here's the vision, folks. You get to play in this sandbox. You only get to play in this sandbox.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
have at it. Go for it. Create stories that I can go out and sell in order to prove that we are the school that we claim to be. But you cannot play in this sandbox over here.
Yeah.
Okay? That's off limits. And so I think that when you're able to do that, when you're using strategy, you're able to give your faculty and staff freedom to start using their imaginations and their creativity to create the stories that prove that you are the school that you claim to be.
And we've talked a lot about leadership and storytelling and how significant that is. I want to just push a little bit more here, Jason, so forgive me, but if you were to glance through this book that you've written, Tom, Leading Through Strategy, you would think that a head of school needs to be a bit of a unicorn, right? They have to have like top EQ. They have to understand the psychology of leading. They also have to understand structures and systems. They have to build and maintain, sustain thriving relationships with many different stakeholders. But there's a part in your book that makes this all come together. And it's when you talk about leaders as architects. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a leader as architect is, and maybe draw from your own experience of you being a leader as architect?
Sure. So a leader as architect, and by the way, that phrase actually came from a Harvard Business Review article several years ago by a study by some British researchers who went in and took a look at leadership in England that actually had an impact on the schools. And what they found is that the leaders who really focused on systems and structures and cultivating those systems in a way that would bring out the best in a talented faculty, those were the schools that made by far the most progress. The schools that didn't make progress were the ones that had the charismatic head who came in and said, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Never took the time to study the school, never took the time to honor the school and its history. And said, again, we're going to do these 3 things, these 4 or 5 things. And it was the evidence was compelling that the architect leaders are the ones who actually created real change and made a difference. In this case, they were looking primarily at test scores, but they were also, I think, looking at faculty attrition as well. And these were the leaders that made the difference, the ones who really got into creating the conditions that allowed talented people to work their magic, i.e. the faculty.
Amazing.
Tom, on those points, and I have a question I got to slip in here before we get too close to the end of the podcast here, but you mentioned talented faculty and staff. You've done a lot of hiring for talented faculty and staff over the years, and we know that really you can realize almost any vision if you have a talented team alongside you. There's a lot of heads and aspiring heads listening to this. What's the secret sauce? How do you know who's a talented faculty and staff? What are you looking for when you're in that interview or that recruitment process?
So the process that we had at Rivers, I had sort of a unique role in it, and I was the last person to speak to the candidate.
Yeah.
The first thing I would say, Jason, is I was obsessed with hiring. I was obsessed with it. And I, especially early on, and I wouldn't step away from it until I was convinced that the division directors or the deans or whoever was responsible, I wouldn't step away until I was convinced that they were going to do a better job than me. So that's point number one. Number two is you never bat 1,000. It's just not going to happen. In terms of process, I learned this in Hawaii because I couldn't afford to bring people out from the mainland. And so I was also obsessed with reference checking. And I had sets of open-ended questions, and I would spend 45 minutes doing a reference check.
Wow. Yeah.
And really learn and making sure that those reference checks, the results of those reference checks aligned with what I was seeing in that candidate. And then the last thing, and this is quite bizarre at Rivers, I knew all the other administrators were going to ask the typical open-ended questions and look at the resume and do the employment interview and so forth. I always made room for my interview where I basically said, our tagline was excellence with humanity. And I said, here's what excellence with humanity means. And can you help us do a better job of living that? Can you do that? And because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who are going to create stories that keep proving and also rewriting what excellence with humanity means. Is that something that you can do?
Love it.
And it typically flummoxed people, but you could tell the ones who would get excited about the idea of generating program and generating stories that I could go out and sell.
And Tom, in this book, like there's so much, but in this book, you also talk about, establishing what quote unquote A-level teachers are at your school. And so for those of us, for those listening,
so critical.
Yeah, for those listening, like this is just gold in terms of Tom. Like he's not joking; he's obsessed with hiring. He talks a lot about it in this book because you can't do anything if you don't have the faculty who can bring that capability. And also in this answer, Tom, when you say, "Can you do a better job helping us lead?" Helping us with that mission statement. you do a great job of always bringing something which is high, aspirational, and lofty into into the day-to-day of the head of school. And this is how it pays off in dividends, to always be able to have those stories at hand and bring life to what you want the aspiration to be.
Yeah, I would also add, Garth, too, is that for any new head, paying attention to faculty culture is really, really critical. There are a set of assumptions that faculty have that, at least in the United States, are often adaptations to, current realities. I've been working with a school where that had enrollment problems, and the faculty learned, we have to meet kids where they are. Okay. And it was a logical adaptation. They didn't want to lose students. In comes a new head and says, no, we're going to have a fixed, excellence is going to be fixed. This is standards. We're having, we want kids to meet these high standards and raise the bar. And the head realized that in order for that to work, he had to work on changing deep-seated assumptions about teaching and learning. Otherwise, that vision was never going to happen. And so that's what he's working on now, is trying to change those sets of assumptions that are so powerful in the faculty culture.
We talk a lot about culture on this podcast, and and how we go about understanding that culture, how we go about reflecting, and then ultimately trying to bend that culture a little bit towards a new direction. I mean, that's the art of leadership.
Yes.
Jason, we're getting towards the end here. Do you want to help us start wrapping it up?
Yeah, no, Tom, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and Garth. This has been an extraordinary conversation. I could carry this on for hours. There's no question. I think the only question I'm left with is how are we going to get you on here for a follow-up? Because I think we've just scratched the surface. Your book is a masterclass in strategic leadership for schools. This conversation's been a masterclass, a real playbook, back to the parlance of Ted Lasso. You have laid it out step by step, and I can't wait to connect with you again. Now, if our listeners are listening and wanting to connect with you or find you, Tom, where would they look?
Sure. Just go to Resource Group 175, RG 175, and I have a page under the About section, and you can, my contact information is there.
Awesome. Yeah. And this, where can they find your book?
On Amazon.
Yeah. Perfect. And so thank you so much again. And to our listeners, whether you are a new head, a strategic planner, or just someone curious about how schools operate, how they navigate the future, you got to pick up this book, Leading Through Strategy. It is, it's full of wisdom and war stories. That's my summary for you. So, Tom, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. So we're going to be back. Hopefully our listeners they're going to be inspired. Hopefully they've read it. They'll come back with some questions. And I can't wait to debrief based on our listener feedback. So, Tom, can you do us the honor of closing up the show for us?
Until then, keep leading the lasso way.
Got it, Tom. Thank you very much. That was so fun.
Nailed it. Thank you so much, Tom. Thanks, everybody.
Grab your coffee, grab your seat. It's time to learn, it's time to meet. Garth and Jason setting the tone. Leadership lessons to take back home. Lassoing leadership sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow. Lasso every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show with lessons from Ted.